Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me for your core work today. We are going to do our core work down on the mat today. So roll out your mat, find a nice comfortable space in your house, and join me down on the mat. So we're starting our workout seated on the mat right here. And I want you to think about growing a little bit taller. We're going to take ourselves from this more forward position to a nice tall position. As you do this, think about all of the muscles that circle your spine getting a little bit stronger and supporting that spine to be a little taller. Once you've gotten into this nice seated position, extend your hands in front of you. I want you to pretend you've grabbed onto a really big elastic band and you are pulling that band towards your chest, releasing it forward. As you pull, that elastic band is adding resistance and you need to work a little harder to pull against it. Bring those elbows behind your back and squeeze so that you can feel the backside of your body working. Pull and release. We're going to do a couple more of these, just telling those muscles on the backside of our body to wake up and do their job. Let's do one more here. Big squeeze, and then release that, allowing yourself to come all the way down to your mat. Bring your feet a little closer. This time, reaching your hands up to the ceiling. I want you to take both hands and let them fall to one side, allowing a little twist through the upper body. Back up and to the other side. Just again, waking up through the spine to let it know that we've got some work to do. Now your range does not have to be overly large, but if you want to and can have the mobility to do it, allow yourself to bring a shoulder blade off the ground and back to center. Lift that shoulder blade and then come back to center. Whatever your range of motion is currently is where we're gonna work. Good, taking those hands and setting them down nice and wide. You can think of your hands as being a bit of an assist or a tripod. So it's going to help keep your body in position as we work through a little bit of lower body warm up. So I want you to think about your hands helping to stabilize as you lift one leg and then bring the other up to meet it. Drive those hands into the ground and engage all through the body. Lower one leg and then lower the other. Do the same thing. Come up, up, down, down. Keep going with this, but go at your own pace. What I want you to really focus on, as you're lowering your legs, your pelvis isn't tilting forward. We want to keep everything strong and anchored in a nice neutral position. So you're not slamming into the ground and you're not allowing that arching of the back to happen. Think of this as being really the stronghold of each of these movements. Keep it nice and anchored. Last one here, lower that down and just let your knees go side to side. Kind of releasing through that lower body that we just worked. All right, from this point, we've woken up all of those muscles surrounding our trunk. So now we're going to make them work a smidge harder. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our knees back up into that 90 degrees again, right here. You can keep your head resting on the floor or you can bring it up, whatever's comfortable for you. I need you to put your hands onto your thighs. We are going to push the thigh into the hand as hard as we can, and it's going to activate everything through here. So again, rest that head down on the ground or pick it up and start to push knee into hand. It's super active. Get ready. 3, 2, 1. Force your hands into your knees and your knees into your hands. So there's a lot of pressure right here. It may not look like we're doing a lot, but if you're pushing hard enough in both directions, you should feel all of this lighting up and working really hard. So constant push. Hand to knee, both pushing as hard as they can. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lower that down. Take a little second here. We're gonna do that active push again. This time, we're gonna push that little bit harder and make it a little tougher because we can do tough things. Get those legs up. Right here, anchor in, hand to thigh, driving the two together in 3, 2, 1. Here we go, push. You're using this, all of this to help drive those knees into those hands. Keep that hand strong, your shoulders strong to push away. Everything's working as hard as it can. Nice job, keep breathing. Active push for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set that down. That should have said a nice big hello to all those muscles through the front side of the body. So let that go for a second right here. We're going to go to a bit more of a traditional sit-up style, but I want you to think about your hands coming to one side. So you're either going to do a half sit-up or a crunch, which is going to bring hands to around knee level, or if you feel like you want to go a little further, yours may resemble a bit more of a sit-up. So you choose where you want to go. Hands are targeting to the outside of the body. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Hands towards the outer thigh, come back down. Other side. Again, choose your range of motion. What I don't want you to do today is use momentum. So I don't want those hands throwing yourself to get up. I need it to be a little bit more controlled. So it's more of a lift and a lower. Lift and lower. And your range of motion may see your hands coming to your thigh and your shoulder blades lifting off the ground, or you might have a little bit more where you're reaching past your thigh and your back is coming off the floor. You choose. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a little rest there. Well done. Little shake out. We're going to go back to those legs being up in that 90-degree position. So kind of like we did in the warm-up, we're going to bring those legs right up here. Option, anchor out, or have your hands lifted. Just depends how you're comfortable. Hands are locked in to help the movement. Hands are lifted to make it a little more difficult. So you choose where you want to go. From here, I want you to think about your toes coming down towards the ground and lifting back up. Join me whenever you're ready. And just know that I want your range of motion to only be as far as you can go without your back tilting. So your range of motion, you're going to get to that point where you feel like your pelvis needs to tilt forward a little, and then you're going to bring it back up. Anchor it in, engage those lower abdominals, anchor in from right here, and choose that range of motion. If you're arching off that mat, I need you to dial it back a little bit. If you're not arching at all and you're thinking, this is amazing, that's where the challenge comes in. You lift those hands, don't anchor in. Good, we've got a couple more here. Keep going through this at your pace. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good, rock that back and forth. Well done. We're gonna revisit those same 3 exercises. So we're gonna start with that knee push again. You know what it feels like this time, you know what we're looking for. So we're gonna be even more active in that push-pull that's happening between the knees and the hands. You ready? Bring those legs up. Find that anchor point. Hands to thighs. Hands to knees and thighs. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Push. Everything is lighting up again. Knees to hands, hands to knees. Keep pressing into one another. Stay here for 10 seconds. Push, push, push. Drive them into each other for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. Let that go. We're going to do that one more time. I don't know about you, but that's getting quite heated. I'm starting to feel that. So one more round, legs up, anchor in, hands and knees are ready to go to war in 3, 2, 1. Push, drive it away, drive it in. Everything's working here. Strong. Try not to let those elbows flare out. Keep everything strong. Don't let that pelvis tilt pull it in. Stay here. Push a little harder for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release that. Good little rock back and forth again. Heading back to that half sit-up or crunch, reaching hands to each side of the body. Anchor everything in again. Find that strength. Lift those hands and join me. We're coming up off the mat and back down. Up off the mat and back down. Remember that option to come up a little higher, only if you want to, and only if you don't feel like you have to throw yourself to get up there. We're doing this in a nice controlled movement. We're not using momentum. And I want you to really squeeze, hold at the top, really engage before laying back down. Make sure that you're breathing. Don't hold your breath. Good. Stay with me. Experiment. Can you go a little higher? Give it a try. Just that tiny little bit higher. That's a win. Every time you lift a little more, that's a win. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let that go. Nice work. We're going back to those leg lifts. 90 degrees on those legs. Everything is anchored. Choose here or choose here. You ready to join me? Lift up those legs right here. Most important, everything is cemented in. Bring those toes down towards the ground and squeeze to lift back up. I kind of like to think about every time I go to lift my legs, I have to squeeze a little more. My legs are sort of the added resistance to this. Hands up or down. And don't go too quickly. This isn't really going to get the desired effect that we want to. 90 degrees and taking your time is exactly what we want. For 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Release that. Good news. We're saying goodbye to those and we're moving on to some new exercises. We're actually going to need to sit up. However you want to get up. You can use momentum for this one. Bring yourself on up because we are going to work on more of a tabletop positioning, which means we're going to be on hands and knees. So we've got another 3 things that we're going to do. And you do have some time to push back into a child's pose in between to give yourself a bit of a recovery for your shoulders and your back. So when I say tabletop, this is the positioning that I'm talking about. Hands and shoulders are a direct line to one another. They're not back here. They're directly over top. Hips are nice and square right here. And from here, we're going to simply start to lift one leg back and bring that forward, switching for the other side. Your leg is just going to go straight back behind you. So don't think about lifting up here. My focus is keeping both of my hip bones facing down to the ground. So I'm really trying not to let a shift happen or a counterbalance happen. The only thing we're going to do is drive that foot back and reset it forward. Once you get a feel for that, I want you to then start to focus on what's your upper back doing. Is it curling or is it drooping? It's called tabletop because we literally want to have a flat tabletop to work from. So be focused on whether this curving of the spine happens. Stay nice and strong right here. For 3, 2, 1. Here's where you can push back right into that child's pose. Take a little second to release here before we add on to what we just learned. The next thing we're going to do is, again from tabletop, take a look. We're going to extend back. Then we're going to let that foot travel out a little, bring it back, and reset. Join me. Bring it back behind, open to the side, bring it back, and reset. Now, what am I looking for this time, you ask? I'm glad you asked. What I'm looking for is not letting our hips counterbalance. We are keeping everything as square as possible. Once again, this is not a big range of motion. We're simply telling our lower abdominals to keep our hips square as we're moving through this range of motion. Slow it right down. Remember, these are not about how many reps you can do. This is about taking the time and waking up all these muscles in our core. Nice work. Keep that back flat. Set that down and go back into your child's pose again. Release this. And then we're going to once again come back to our tabletop. So this time our tabletop is going to get a little bit more active. Just like we had that active push when we were laying on our back, this active movement is going to be tucking our toes under, lifting our knees. My knees are just above the mat. So try this with me. Tuck your toes under, bring your knees just off the floor, and see if you can hover there. What it's not is this. My kneecaps are staying really close to the floor. They are just skimming the floor. You may be feeling this right through here as well as in the shoulders. Keep that back nice and long. Set that down and go back into child's pose. Take a big deep breath here. Blow that out, coming back to tabletop, tucking those toes under again, ready to lift right here. It's not a big movement. Remember, my knees are just skimming the ground, but I'm working pretty hard in order to accommodate my knees just skimming the ground. Keep that back nice and open. 3, 2, 1, setting that down, stretching that out. We're going to revisit that first thing we did in tabletop, that leg extension. I'm going to give you some options. You can stick with that leg extension, or you can add on. But either way, come up to this tabletop. We're going to start with that leg extension behind right here, switching sides each time. If you're feeling like this is pretty successful for you, you're going to start to lift hand and leg. Again, taking your time, not letting that back change position, keeping it in that tabletop. Make sure that you're breathing. One final one here. Bring that down and push back into that child's pose again. Again, coming back up to that tabletop and remembering that second one where we added the little leg shift. So come with me, scoot out behind, shift it, come back, reset, go the other side. Now, just like we did in that round last time where we added the hand, yep, it's an option. Only add that hand if you're feeling super stable in the hips when you're doing just the leg. If you find your hips are kind of wanting to counterbalance, stay right here. Squeeze to work through that range of motion. If you're working on hand and foot together, don't let those hips open up. Final one right here. Set that down, back to child's pose. We have those knee lifts to do in our tabletop, and then we're done. Take a stretch right here. Big deep breath. Coming back to that tabletop one more time. Tuck those toes under. We're gonna lift our knees off the ground and we're gonna keep that tabletop position. Join me when you're ready. Hover just above the ground. Right here is doing a lot of work to keep myself lifted and still in that tabletop position. If I disengage that, I come back here or I lift my hips. So I want you to really think about staying forward in your hands, knees just in a hover. Set that down, take a little rest. We're gonna do one more. Last time, back into that tabletop position. Tuck those toes, lift the knees, making sure they're right here and not out here. It's not a plank. Keep them in a little closer. Make sure you're breathing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This time release back into a nice deep child's pose. Take a big deep breath right here. Beautiful work. This time you're gonna come up into tabletop again, but it's to stretch, I promise. Take one hand, scoop it, and just allow your spine to turn. If you have the mobility, you can drop down a little further. If not, just that little spinal twist is doing the same thing. Come to that tabletop, switch your hand, drop that shoulder down to the mat, little twist here, all the way down if you have the mobility. Staying up here if that's not comfortable, allowing the spine to twist. Nice work. Back to tabletop, tucking those toes. No, you don't have to lift to that tabletop. You're just gonna push yourself back and then slowly start to come up to a nice standing position. Once you're up here, roll your shoulders back, really open the chest as you come forward and backward with those shoulders. Go the other way. Good. Take one foot, step it behind the other, and reach over. Nice stretch through here. Release that, going to the other side, stretching through here. Standing nice and tall, opening up those hands, pulling those hands back behind the body. Good. Release that, stand nice and tall, and you're done. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that I'm going to see you again really soon.